Om Yam Brahma Varnendraruda Marutaha Stanbanti Devoy Vedai Sangapada Krama Upanishadoi Gyanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavashtita Tadgatena Manasha Pashanti Yam Yogino Yashantam Naviduhu Sura Suragana Devaya Tasmai Namaha. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Our eternal salutations to that one who is the truth of life and existence, and whom the saints and sages call by different names. Our eternal salutations to that one whose glories are sung in the different scriptures of the various religious traditions of the world, but whose infinite and undying grandeur no mortal mind can comprehend. Our eternal salutations to that one upon whom the devotees meditate in the shrine of their hearts, realizing an ineffable presence in their deepest contemplations. May he prompt our minds toward the path of truth and righteousness. May she reveal herself into our souls and dispel the gloom of death, fear, doubt, and darkness. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. And so now here in SRV San Francisco, we find ourselves this weekend on the verge of a great storm. That is very heavy rains coming, which San Francisco is in dire need of, but one of the biggest storms possibly to come through here in this region, and will bring forth lots of liquid nourishment for the earth, as long as it doesn't turn into Noah's Ark and wash us all away again. But we also sit here in this classroom with a inner rain that comes down. It's called Dharma Mega Samadhi by the father of yoga, that is Patanjali. He said it's a rain cloud of virtues. And when you study the Dharma or the teachings of India, whether it be from Vedanta or yoga or Samkhya or Tantra or Buddhism or any of the other darshanas of India, you uncover this rain cloud of virtues inside of yourself. That is, if you can get through the surface chatter of the mind and diminish the ego and hone your intellect to such a state that it can penetrate through appearances. That's false superimpositions is the term in Vedanta. That is the superimposition of name and form over the nameless, formless reality called Brahman, which we just chanted about. Then you can affect a very deep realization. And we know this path of India has been called by many different names in Sanskrit and in English and in different countries around the world. One of those is known just generally as self-realization. So it speaks in terms of realizing the divine self, which is not the possession of any religion, any single religion. It transcends religion. That divine self, which we call Atman in Vedanta, or could call it Buddha nature if you don't like the word self, like the Buddhists like to try and stay away from that word because it quite often refers to the small self or ego self, which gets in the way. But if you can remove that ego covering from over the inner eye, because we know that there are veils over the outer eye too, but and various defects in the senses, but if you can awaken this inner eye and look clearly inside, then you'll see that all these divine virtues aren't anything to be gained. They're principles already existing within you. And that's one of the unique features of Vedanta, is that everything is within you. All lies within you. Or Christ said the kingdom of heaven is within you. However you want to put it, it's already a fact of existence. That is existence with a capital E. Because existence with a small e, again, we have to make a distinction between these things. It's called dualities. We have to distinguish between higher reality and relativity. We have to distinguish between form and formlessness, and light and darkness, and good and evil, and so forth. So dualities occur to us at all levels of our being, as long as we're in the realm of name and form. And the realm of name and form are those kingdoms of heaven within, too. They've manifested out here, but they began within us, you see, and then they express themselves outwardly. That's another unique facet of Vedanta, is that everything, all this knowledge lies within you, and everything is made of knowledge. So you can look around the world with two eyes and see everything made of matter, or you can open your third eye and look around and see everything made of spirit. It's up to you to hone that discriminating wisdom inside of you. We call it viveka. It's a fitting name that Swami Vivekananda took when he brought Vedanta here in 1893. We were so fortunate to have received a fully realized soul on American soil at that time, and there's not been the likes of him to arrive here since. He's really just the harbinger of this non-dual truth that you find particularly outlined in Vedanta. You'll find it in Christianity, which many of us were raised in, but it's quite often covered over again by fundamentalism and by dualism. And so back to the main point then, this self with a capital S, or this Atman within you, is replete with all divine traits and all divine qualities, and one merely goes seeking it within. That is, with an inward trajectory. It's called involution, not just evolution, but you have to take an involution. Then you begin to uncover these divine traits inside of you, and you can claim them as your own because they belong to you. That's your divine inheritance, but it's laying at a distance from most people. They don't see it, and then they don't claim it. If they were to see it, then they'd probably become more adamant about partaking of it. When you partake of it, we were talking last night here at satsang, Friday night at the SRB Center here in San Francisco. We had satsang and questions and answers and so forth. And remember, Tejamaya was here, and we were talking about savoring things mentally. That inner life is about savoring things mentally. The outer life is about activities and repetition of activities, the same repetition every day, over and over again. You go to work, you come home, you eat, you drink, you sleep, and that's the realm of outer activity. But when Christ saw the fishermen along the river, he wanted them to have an inner life too. He saw that they had an outer life with loaves and fishes and wives and huts and all that, but he saw that they were missing this inner life. And I would venture to say that a greater amount of percentage of the world of people do not have an inner life. I've met and trained with a few monks in my life, Ramakrishna order swamis, and they had inner lives. They were engaged in them every day. In fact, every hour, every breath, I saw many of them engaged only in inner life. Outer life had lost its charm for them. Well, that's not going to happen to most householders. They have to try and keep a little shine on things, see, so they can raise their families and make money and go to work and be successful and all that. It's not that that's a negative thing, but for the monks it has lost its sheen, so they're not interested in it anymore. But for the householders, they're going to have to sort of keep a foot in both worlds, if you might say. They're going to have to somehow keep that attraction to the world going as long as they can, but they have to supplement it or complement it with an inner life, because there are poisons that rise up in external life: lust, anger, greed, envy, jealousy, pride, shame, fear, delusion. You can go on and on with a grand list. You see, it would be Kindler's list in this case. So we could just note all of them, and there are the passions and the fetters and the bondages and the antaryayas and the vikshepas, and they're just a grand list of them, and most of us are familiar with all of them and maybe have a problem with a few of them, and the others don't bother us. So whatever the case may be, these things need to be offset, and you offset those by this internal life. Now, I must say that that's not the best use for eternal life. It'd be nice if, like some of these great souls whose pictures are on our wall here, Jesus and Dalai Lama and Buddha and so forth, they were already born pure, so they didn't have to worry about any of these things. So that should suggest to us that there's a way in which we can lead our lives where we can neutralize all of these, what we call karmas in Sanskrit, and purify our minds while we're living, or keep our minds pure, even while we're raising families and going to work and all this, and keep worldliness at bay and keep spirituality close to our hearts. Keep God close to our hearts, if you want to put it that way. And therefore, when we pass at the end of our life, have no regrets, have no fears, have lived a perfectly dharmic or even divine life. And then if we want to come back again, because rebirth is a part of the process, then we come back in a fine and fettle shape. You see, we don't have these things, and we see people in our lives sometimes that seem to be impervious. Like our founder Lex Hickson here at SRV was like that. He's just impervious to negativities, and just walked around in a positive state all the time. And even when challenges came, they were just minor. It was easy to succeed. Just put his pure mind on it. And so we know of beings like this, and like I say, I've trained with some, so I saw the proof of it. And so it's a sort of secondary ideal, I'd say, and it's very important for the householders to have this dharmic life. And so back to the rain cloud of virtues, this inner rain cloud that's always pouring forth these things. We must consider ourselves to be thirsty birds. There's a bird in India called chatak bird, and it won't drink from any stream or any mountain, or it won't drink from any pool. It'll only drink rainwater that falls when the star Swati is in the ascendant. So it's thirsty most its life, you see, and then when the star Swati, you see it up there, and then it rains at that time, then it'll drink that water. There's a beautiful little story Sri Ramakrishna used to tell about souls that will only partake of God realization, things that are divine, things that are dharmic. They won't drink of from ordinary streams and pools, worldly things, you see. They're very, very discriminating and very picky. So they keep you want to put it that way, keep their diet, their spiritual diet, very pure, and they're very fastidious about it. And so they don't have these negative reactions coming all the time. And so that's, of course, a symbol for this pure soul, Paramahamsa. Hamsa means a swan, and Paramahamsa means the great swan. So this great white swan is a symbol for the soul that will drink only this water of truth, you see, and we'll even go thirsty. If truth happens to be covered at that time, or it's not available for some reason or other, it will not accept any substitutes. It'll only stick to the truth. And of course we saw that epitomized in Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, and of course his great student Swami Vivekananda. So that rain cloud of virtues is a good subject to begin our class with. And if you see, and if we recall, my last visit here was 3.5 months ago, so the winter break is always the longest. I'll be back in May, and we will have another session, and also back for the summer retreat. So we'll go on with our 4 times a year treatment and study of the scriptures, which is what we do in SRV. We worship and we study, and then we try and serve other beings, serve God in other beings, and we also try and meditate. Those are the 4 yogas, right? Raja Yoga is meditation through the 8-limbed path. After you learn to concentrate, and after you learn to sit and breathe and so forth, and then you can balance your energies and penetrate through appearances and have this inner life we were just talking about. And then karma yoga is sort of the opposite of that. I mean, you go inward and everything is actionless, and then you come outward and everything is replete with actions, full of action. So you have to be able to move back and forth between these 2 very diverse paths, as if they were one path. Shri Krishna says that in the Gita. Those who know action in inaction, and inaction in action, they know, they truly know. Those are the ones that know the truth, that there's really only one path. Like I was seeing a bumper sticker on the driving around San Francisco yesterday. It said, there are not many ways to peace. Peace is the way. So that's Advaitic thinking. There are not many ways to peace. Peace is the way. You're looking for all these paths to get there, but it's inside of you. The truth is inside of you, and you already epitomize that, but you just haven't realized it. You see, so you're venturing forth on different paths, trying to find yourself, which is already your own true nature. See? It's sort of like the musk deer, who runs around the forest looking for that scent on the wind, right? Not knowing that it comes from its own navel. Musk comes from the deer's navel. So make a little bit of study about nature, and you'll find out that nature, or things and objects, hold the secret to divine reality. Every one of them is saying God, 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 as it were. So you won't find God in matter, but you'll find God representing. You'll find matter representing divine reality. They're symbols, they're signposts. And the only thing is that you have to, as I was just saying, savor them. So you'll have to take them inside and meditate on their essence. You can meditate on a picture of a great soul, but then you're going to have to take that picture of the great soul and meditate on what it symbolizes inside of you. You see, so you can see a picture of Jesus or Buddha, and that's a good pratika, it's called, or a lambana in yoga. It's a foundation for meditation. It can place you in a one-pointed state, and you can feel devotion by looking at the picture. But the picture isn't going to transform you. You're going to have to savor what the picture represents inside of your mind. So contemplation is just mental savoring. If people took that attitude more often, then life would be so much sweeter. You see, everything, they could savor everything. And you have to realize, as we were speaking about last night in satsang, that you have to savor negative things too. There are some very dark negative things that are very beneficial for you to look at. So in yoga, it's not like we just go looking for the good and everything, see, and then try and get away from the bad. That's not going to work. See, even if you could succeed at it, which you probably can't. Negativity will find you somewhere hiding. There are people who run away from negativity all the time, and it finds them, haunts them. So that's why, you, like Christ said, and we'll look at this in a minute in accord with one of these slokas, if you bring out what is within you, Jesus said, what is within you will save you. But if you don't bring out what is within you, what you don't bring out will destroy you. So this is, again, along the lines of this mental savoring. You see, you have to be able to go inside with a big smile. See? It'd be nice if you could come out with a big smile and show it to the world too, but there are negativities out there that you're going to have to contemplate. Like, for instance, the great fear, the Buddhists call it. What do you think the great fear is? For everyone. Death, of course. So death is going to be one of those things that is immensely beneficial for you to meditate upon. Because why? Because you'll find out that the soul doesn't die. It never died. Because it was never born, it cannot die. And we can sing it. We've sung it, Nam Ritjor Nashanka Name Jati Beta. Shankara sings about it in his Nirvana Shatkam. He says, no birth have I, and no death, no father, no mother. You see, so I am pure conscious awareness. I am Shiva, he sings. Chidananda Rupaha, Shivaham, Shivaham, is the refrain. So you could probably hear that from a teacher and walk away being impressed and maybe entertain the thought. But it's not until you savor it inside of yourself, you see, that you're going to realize it. You can't just hear it and walk away. You have to contemplate it after you hear it, and then you have to realize it after you contemplate it. That's called Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava. Or Shravana, Manana, and Nidijasana. Sometimes we know it, like Shankara and the Vivekachudamani. Shutehe Shatagunam Vidyan Mananam Mananadapi Nidijasam Lakshagunam Anantam Nirvikalpakam. A bunch of really powerful words he piles together there in that sloka out of the Vivekachudamani, the crest jewel of discrimination, which they wear on their head, you see, when they become realized. They're this crown of, like Christ wore a crown of thorns. It means like, renunciation. They're masters at renunciation. They can give up their very life and it won't matter. So, first hear it, then take it in and contemplate it, and then realize it. So most people, and it works both with outer wisdom and inner wisdom. Lower wisdom is science and math and arts and those kinds of things. It's called lower wisdom, lower knowledge. And that's what people have to make their living with and learn their subjects and all that. So that gives you the ability to study and so forth. And you get a little bit of outer knowledge, but that's not going to cut it in the inner realms. You see, you're going to have to move inside and contemplate, learn this art of mental savoring. So anything you look at or espy, you should take it inside, you see, and consider it. It's not just you find a path and a teacher and they tells you to meditate, so you meditate, you see, and that's it. But you have to actually bring meditation into all of life. If an experience happens to you that's negative, you take it home and you sit with it that night. Because if you don't sit with it and neutralize it, it's going to accumulate in your mind. It's called lust and anger and greed and envy. All those things are just accumulations of things you didn't resolve when they happened to you in the outer life, you see. And people don't know that they're carrying this weight of them. That's what karma is. This is weight they're carrying around of things they didn't resolve, and they didn't resolve them because they didn't practice the art of contemplation. See, go home every night and get up every morning with a neutral slate. You see, you're born every lifetime with a neutral slate. You die at the end of your lifetime with a neutral slate. Slate means mind, because the mind is the culprit here. Mind with its ego and its thoughts. The mind is the king and the sovereign of the senses. There are 6 senses, really. Smelling, tasting, touching, hearing, and seeing, yes, but there's a 6th sense called the mind that controls them all. See, even like your outer senses are connected to your brain, right? Your inner senses are connected to your mind. Brain and mind are 2 different things. Connected, yes, but different realms. They operate in different realms. Brain out here, born, decays, dies, you see. And then the mind inside, eternal, you see. Goes on and on, projecting and projecting and projecting. That's an eternal predicament, you might say, the mind. You're just constantly thinking and projecting and experiencing. But why don't you turn all this thinking, projecting, and experiencing into savoring? Why don't you get to the essence of every experience you have? Because people are having hundreds and thousands of experiences yearly, see. But they never go and think about them. They just let them happen, right? So you can put it this way: there's the experience, and then there's the experiencer. See, there's the dancer, the dance, and then there's the dancer, right? There's the dream, and then there's the dreamer. So you're the latter of those, you see. You're the dreamer, you're the dancer, you're the experiencer. But your experiences have taken you away and taken away your power to extract essence from the experience. And that extraction is done through contemplation. I'm not even speaking of meditation yet. When I say contemplation, I mean you're still using the mind and objects. It's just that the objects have gone inside now. And there's some great advantages to knowing that objects exist first in your mind and then come out here as objects. See, matter follows consciousness. See, thought first, then matter. In the West, we even know it. Thought is father to the deed. I don't know who said that, but that's a saying in the West. Thought is father to the deed. So even in Western thinking, it's that way. But in Eastern philosophy, they make the direct correlations in sets of fives. 5 elements, back to 5 senses, back to 5 subtle senses, back to 5-fold mind, with 5 pranas in their life force, you see, and 5 subtle elements called tanmatras. There's a whole sets of 5s that go back inside. It's called the quintuplication process. So they want you to know about those and contemplate them. So there you have it right there. Let's take water, you see, as my alambana. So I'm going to take the thought of water in my mind and I'm going to savor it, you see. I'm going to think of all the uses for water. I'm going to run all its properties through my mind. And then I'll become master of water, and then I can go on to earth, you see. So if you want to master a thing, to know it is to master it. If you don't know it, then it's all sorts of danger to you. See? So you have to come to know every little thing like that. And not just with the brain and the outer senses. That's what science is doing. See? So now it's stuck in this problem of cycles, see, that the Buddha talked about. It's all material, isn't it? There's no involution, it's just all evolution. And the origin is a physical origin called a Big Bang, but it's not a cosmic origin like a great soul, you see, like consciousness itself. These great souls that we worship are not matter. That's why he's saying, I have no death because I was never born. You know, he knows himself as birthless, deathless consciousness. Conscious, timeless, deathless awareness, like Sixon used to say, our founder. So all of these things are to ponder, and one of the greatest things to ponder that we've been rotating around in chapter 5 of the Svetashvatara Upanisad is this duality of God with form and God without form. In India they call it nirguna and saguna Brahman. Guna means modes of nature. So nir means extinct. So in nirguna Brahman, all the modes of nature have been wiped out. There's no form left. And that's only to be experienced in meditation. You can't have that any time. You get it a little in deep sleep tonight, or last night, you see. You'll get a little bit of what the sense of formless, to be formless is like, but you don't remember it when you wake up. As you come, all your memories come dancing back, your senses turn back on, and then consciousness is limited, you see, to these little mechanisms. To hands that grasp, and tongue that tastes, and eyes that see, you see. But then it goes back into sleep and it vacates those senses, and consciousness goes back into a deeper state called dream, and then an even deeper state called visionary. So here it is right here on this chart. You see, first it's the waking state, right? Where you have hearing, feeling, seeing, tasting, smelling, speaking, acting, moving, procreation, excretion, and ether, air, fire, water, and earth. These are all these 24 cosmic principles we just talked about that make up your outer world. That's your outer life, see. But look at how much inner life there is compared to outer life, you see. And nature has a lot to do with this. I mean, nature has produced all of these things, but it can't do it by itself because it's insentient. How can an insentient thing produce objects? It has to have a sentiency behind it. And that sentiency is called consciousness or awareness or the soul, even the mind, if you will, see, is the producer of things. It's the producer of substances. They don't just come from nowhere. Space can't just produce them by itself. It'll provide the physical portions, but the intellectual and conceptual portions come from thought, come from mind. You have to connect it back to mind, else you just end up in this material cycle all the time. On the wheel of birth and death, Lord Buddha said, for lifetimes, without knowing the truth, see. So there's how to put it in the states of consciousness. Waking state experiences all this. Dream state begins to experience subtle forms. You see, gross forms, subtle forms. Then visionary state begins to see deities. If you open your third eye in meditation, then you can see deities. You see there are realms like earth, air, fire, water, and ether, but there are also goddesses and gods of earth, air, fire, water, and ether. They're called elementals. And these deities become more and more pronounced and more powerful and more evident as you move in. See? And you have to know how to appease them. So you have to know how to deal with them inside, or else you just remain turned off to them, asleep to them. See? But when you wake up, you see that the whole inner field of inner awareness is peopled by beings, just like this outer field is peopled by beings. And there are thousands, how many, 7 billion or something out there running around on the physical earth now? But there are many more billions inside of you. See, that's where the outer came from, is the inner. That's what rebirth is all about. But if you get beyond the tendency to be reborn, then you begin to have these visions of, like Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Would be a way of putting it in our tradition. That is the lords of projection, sustenance, and withdrawal. So that everything is coming in and out of them. Sometimes they call that the cosmic egg, Hiranyagarbha. It's an ancient Sanskrit word and concept for and it's known in other traditions too. So, for instance, if you were to look at this chart, you see here, these are all the different religions of the world here. There's Hinduism and Buddhism and Taoism and so forth. Well, here's what one of the lesser known religions has to say about olden times like that. That is, in this case, it's the religion of Shintoism from Japan. It has an interesting way of putting it here. In ancient times, heaven and earth were one, like an egg containing seeds. The pure part was drawn out to form the heavens. The gross part became the earth. Heaven formed first, earth after. Divine beings were produced between them. That's out of one of the books of wisdom in Shintoism, Japan. So they talk about it in terms of an egg. So that egg in Hinduism or in ancient Vedic terms was called Hiranyagarbha. It's like this cosmic egg that out of which everything comes. See? So you can check the other religions and find corroborations. Now, back to this, you find out that you have a waking state, as we were saying. You have a dream state, and there's traditionally speaking, waking, dream, and deep sleep, and turiya. They call it the 4 states. I've added in the visionary state here, and also turiyatita and turiya. So you've got these, if you want to put it in sets of 5s again, waking, dream, visionary, deep sleep, and turiya. And so as consciousness goes inside, goes within, kingdoms of heaven within first, then it finds these heavens get subtler and subtler, and they begin to even lose form. Pretty soon they're just light, and then it becomes one great light, homogeneous, and like a hailstone falling into an ocean. They say the soul just gets absorbed there. And that's what happens to you in deep sleep tonight too. You get totally absorbed. Your ego, your body, your mind, your senses, everything gets absolutely absorbed, and you feel blissful. And if you have 25 minutes of deep sleep, you usually wake up refreshed, you see. But if you dream for 6 or 8 hours, you wake up a nervous wreck, because you haven't had that formless rest yet, you see. You're always running your wheels. In the waking state, you're running your wheels. Then in the dreaming state, you're running your wheels some more, based on what you did in the waking state, you see. So the waking state is in charge. But for these great souls that we're talking about, divine reality is in charge. You see, they've purified their minds and honed their intellects and dwindled their ego to such a state that they let all the light in through those apertures. And then they become just this light that they see in meditation. They become that. It's a process of immersion and absorption. And then that's why Christ came out of the wilderness and said, I'm the light of the worlds. You see, because he had just like seen the light and absorbed in it. And he happened to be a kind of soul that had enough power to come out of that light. Most can't. If you get absorbed into that light, you're not going to want to come out. And there'll be nothing to come out, you see. Just your pure conscious awareness is what they call that. And we don't hear about that in Christendom because it's not a religion of meditation. It's a religion of prayer, basically dualistic. Although in essence it would be non-dualistic if you asked Jesus. He would point you toward the Father. You get to the Father through the Son, is what they say. So, they want you to go deeper, but those who tried got ostracized from the church, like Meister Eckhart and so forth. So it's a different kind of art you're practicing there in the Eastern religions. It's a wisdom path that disintegrates the ego and frees the self. It's not dependent on a savior. See, it wants to look for an exemplar. My teacher used to say that. He said in India, in the East, we look upon our avatars as exemplars, not saviors. And they didn't come to save us. If they come to save you, then you've fallen a long way. So you need saving. Oh, why do you need saving? I and my Father are one. Be thee perfect as thy Father in heaven is perfect. You should be living in that perfection all the time, and there shouldn't be anyone to tell you different. See? In fact, the great teachers will tell you the same. You see, yes, you are that. It's a 3-word mantra, tat tvamasi, that thou art. If they want to get right to the point of things, they'll just say tat tvamasi, and there's something to savor. You see, I am that. You start meditating not on the separation of God and mankind and creature and creator and nature and spirit, but you start meditating on the oneness of them. See, because that was the way they were in the beginning. And actually, when you say beginning, you're talking about time, so that also confuses it. It's actually beyond time. See, it's beyond the 3 phases of time. That's why this morning we chanted Adihi Sasam Yoga Namitta Hetu Paras Trikala Dekalopi Dristaha Tam Vishvarupam Bhava Bhuta Midyam Devam Swachitastam Upasya Purvam. So it says, meditate upon the Lord as thine own self, seated in your heart. That's the first line of it. See, some rishi was saying, thousands of years ago, he said, how can I communicate to people throughout time what I've realized here? That God and mankind are one. That they were never separate. Ever. It just appeared to be separate. You see. How am I going to say that? Okay, well, I think I'll say, meditate upon the Lord seated in your heart as thine own self. See. Don't meditate on it somewhere else, outside of you, because you're not going to find God outside of you. Does that hurt the Christian sensibilities? I don't think so, because John said, no one has seen God with these eyes. So if you're following your Christianity, then you must know that Christ and his apostles knew that God was not on earth. The closest thing to God on earth was Jesus walking around. That's the avatar. So if no one has seen God with these eyes, then it must mean to see God you're going to have to give up these eyes and develop what they call a third eye. So didn't Christ say, if thine eye be single, you shall know the truth? And didn't he probably also had heard that from the Indian seers who came through when he went traveling, left Judea and probably went east? You see, he heard them. He heard about the Gita, and Krishna was there. Jnana Chakshu Arjuna, you must open the wisdom eye, then you will see everything. See, it's there at the center of the forehead. All of these religions right here that I've just shown you, almost all of them mention the third eye. It's not just an Indian thing. You see on some poster with a goddess at the third eye or something. See, they all, Taoism particularly, mention the third eye. They call it the white dove ascending, by other beautiful titles. So So that's going to be something to take account of. You see, when you do this mental savoring I'm talking about, you have to open that inner eye and remove the distinction between mankind and God that's been foisted there by everything that you've experienced in your life so far to date. When you hear the non-dual teachings, that's it for you. You see, you may not realize it right away, but you've just become a non-dualist. See, when you hear "I and my Father are one," or "that thou art," or something inside of you goes, "Oh, there it is. That's what I forgot." See, now I can go back into my life and I'm fine. Whatever happens, whatever I do or don't do. But it takes a little time for the acid of that kind of non-dual mantra, if you want to call it that, to seep into the cracks of your thinking consciousness and your sleeping consciousness, you see, and waken you up. But it's just a matter of time, probably one lifetime, before that will make so much sense to you that you'll just leave the other times and climes behind. You won't want to go back, see, to I and my Father are two, or I'm separate from God, or mankind is different from God, see, or nature is separate from me. All those things will disappear for you, and then you're just this avid non-dualist. You're walking around, seeing God in everything, as they say. See? But you're not seeing God in form, because John said you cannot see God with these eyes. So it's not God, the formless, that you're seeing here. It's God with form. That's Saguna Brahman. See? That's how they put it. Talk about Christian sensibilities. Well, there are also Hindu sensibilities, and the Hindu sensibility was that we cannot just call everything an illusion, because there are many schools in India, or some schools in India, that did. It's illusory, give it up. It's a tact you can take. You see, when you really want to get through the morass of Maya, you just say, that's illusion, I give it up, you see. And you just walk through it. That's good if you can do that. Monks can do that. You see, strong souls can do that. Christ could do that. He was a great renunciate. Well, I think I'll go into the forest for 40 days and 40 nights, or on the hill, or in the mountain, or sit under the bo tree for 49 days and have nirvana, like Buddha, they could do that. And so, yes, there will be a great facing off with the worlds of name and form at some point, and you'll want to get koivalya, freedom from name and form. You'll want to know yourself to be different from nature. You're not nature. So in that sense, you'd have to say the oneness of nature and the soul is by way of association and relationship. It's not by way of essence. You are not matter. So to understand that means, I'm not a material substance or anything made of matter, but that matter has come out of me, you see, as my thought, and then my thought turned into objects. Holy Mother used to say that all the time. She said, objects are just thought concretized. Trying just to bring it as simply as she could put it and slap us in the face with it. Don't you know that all of this is just your own thought made manifest? You thought it first and then it happened. And that's what happens with God. God thinks and then the world happens. He's God with form, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. They're going to project. They're going to project the worlds, and then they're going to sustain them, Vishnu, and then they're going to destroy them, Shiva. And that's going to go on forever in cycles. Well, when you understand that at the visionary level, then you're probably going to want to get beyond the power of the gods, because you don't want to go in cycles anymore. And your very nature is one with Brahman. So you don't have to fall under the control of any power. See? And you shouldn't. You should realize your own innate power. And that's yoga, is realizing your own innate power. Yoga means union with reality. So then you're going to be transcending these levels of consciousness as you move along. Now, all of this Nirguna, Saguna, Brahman is a kind of refresher course from 3.5 months ago. I'm sorry it took so long for us to get back to it, but I hope in the meantime, while I've been gone, you've been reading Chapter 5. Maybe you could read it once every day. Hopefully, maybe you'll start to savor some of the slokas. You say, oh, I like that particular sloka. I think I'll memorize that. And then when I memorize it, I'll think about it. And then I'll think, that wisdom is the most beautiful thing possible. See, what's the most beautiful thing possible? What do I mean by that? If you even want to put it in a Christian sense, you see. And I turned within to behold wisdom, as well as madness and folly. Then I saw that wisdom excelled folly, as far as light excels darkness, and I invested myself with her as a raiment of glory, and I put her on my head as a crown of joy. See? Wisdom. She's talking about Mother Wisdom. See, Saraswati. See, the goddess of the word, the power of understanding, pure intellect, whatever you want to call her. Kali, Durga, goddess of wisdom. So, hear that again. I turned within to behold wisdom, as well as madness and folly. So your mind contains wisdom, and it contains madness. Have you noticed? It's not just other people's minds. We know they contain madness. They're doing some crazy things out there. But our own mind also holds madness. That is, it holds good and it holds evil. So you can never purify the mind. You're going to have to transcend it. You can't water the weeds and expect to get anywhere. You have to withdraw the water from the weeds and just water the flowers only. So you have to make that journey, that spiritual journey. That's an involution. That's a savoring of the good in you. You have to bring out what is the good in you, because if you bring out what's good in you, it'll save you. But if you don't bring out what's good in you, it'll destroy you. So you have to make this journey. If you leave it all fallow and just sitting there, it's going to sprout seeds in many lifetimes that you're not ready to handle yet. You see. Actions that you did before are going to come up in this lifetime as effects, and you're not going to be ready for them. And that's why people are mad. See. They're mad angry, but they're also mad insane. You see, two kinds of madness, as you will, or maybe many types of madness. So when I looked inside my mind, I saw that I had divinity and I had devilry, both, you see, inside of me. So then let's look at Zoroastrianism right here. See. The two primal spirits who revel themselves in vision as twins are the better and the bad in thought, word, and action. Between these two, the wise choose aright, the foolish not so. So Zoroastrianism, very few adherents to that religion anymore, but one of the world's great traditions, no less, talks about this presence of good and evil also within, and that the wise will choose the good, and the foolish not so. So they will choose wrong every time. And when they choose wrong, they build a habit of choosing wrong. In Hinduism, that's called a samskara, or a mental impression. See, by making an error over and over again, sort of like cutting, letting it heal, cutting again, letting it heal, cutting. You get a scar tissue, right? The same happens with the mind. You cut with a certain action, negative action, you cut again later, you cut again later. A habit becomes an obsession, becomes an addiction to whatever it is, you see, and you just run that into the mind as a scar. And that's in your mind when you pass, and it's going to be in your mind when you bring your mind back into the next body. And you will until you get free of birth and death. So you know that you're also unborn and undying. That your soul is unborn and undying. That is, you know that everything made of matter and energy, thought, appears and disappears. Probably better not to use the word born and dying, because it doesn't really happen. But it appears, it rises, as the Buddhists say, like on the ocean, and then it falls back in, just like waves. And that's constantly happening. Who can count them? Waves, ripples, sea foam, spray. I mean, all these effects coming off an ocean, and who can know the amount of them? Who can even imagine how many there are? And so that many souls having that many experiences for that length of time, or an endless amount of time, is what's going on in samsara. That's called samsara sagara. Sagara means ocean. And samsara means delusion. So there's your madness, you see. I looked inside and I found folly. These are the people who are just being reborn, born again, and living in ignorance. If you want to put it the way he did, there's my teacher, Swami Asheshanandaji Maharaj. I can illustrate the way he would put that for you. He would put it something like this. What hinders freedom? It is ignorance. We are princes, but we are behaving like beggars on account of this delusion that has overtaken us. It is like spiritual amnesia. In Vedanta we call it avidya, ignorance. You must know that there is no word for sin in India. All this suffering is on account of avidya, ignorance, and egotism, asmita. So this is all you're doing, see. It isn't coming from God or devil. It's all you're doing. That's one way he would put it. Here's another way. You have hypnotized yourself into thinking that you are Hindu, Christian, Jew, or an agnostic. All these are called upadhis. Upadhis are superimpositions by the mind over consciousness. You are to negate them and realize the truth by asking the question, who am I? Ramana Maharshi followed that method. First you say, Naham. Anything that changes, I am not. Naham. Then you say, Kaham. Who am I then? Then you affirm saying, Saham. Saham means I am infinite. Swami Asheshanandaji Maharaj's teachings. This is one of these great souls that I mentally apprenticed, you see, that I became the disciple of. It was my mantri guru, and frequented his company often while he was living, and he would say things like this. For instance, like, no one has seen God with these eyes. Here's a nice saying of his. The Judeo-Christian faith is a dualistic faith. Why dualistic? Because it accepts that behind the body and mind complex there is an underlying reality called the soul. But that is just the ego. They mistake it for the soul. It is that ego-mind complex that dreams itself from heaven to earth to hell. So we've all, in our naivete, walked around saying, yes, there's a soul within me. But most often what we're feeling is our ego. That's what he's saying. We've made a huge mistake. We haven't learned to distinguish between the ego-mind mechanism and the Atman. So now we're calling this intuition and this great spirit we feel inside, we're calling that the soul. It's not the soul, that's the ego. And everyone and everyone's action is following the ego. They're out for their own good, they're out for their own pleasure, they're out for their own devices, you see. Even their knowledge is the ego's knowledge. So you're going to have to break through that and see this non-dual platform. So you have to go to a non-dual state. Somebody like him who can teach you the art of non-duality, Advaita Vedanta, that Jesus was teaching, but which didn't get emphasized for 2,000 years. You see, it didn't get underscored. It got superimposed. You see, over. That's what he's saying here. It's a superimposition, upadhi. You see, you're putting things over the truth all the time. And when you're not doing it consciously, you're doing it unconsciously with this ego. The ego is doing it for you. You see, well, I think I'll cover that up and not think about it. You see, so you're not bringing out the good that's inside of you. You see, so that it can free you. You're covering it over. See, so this path that I'm talking about is a path of the mind. It's not a path of the body. Let the body do what it will after the mind knows itself. You see, the body will be fine. But until then, the body is a huge container of problems for people. Diseases. I went to see my doctor just yesterday, you see. Have a TV going in his office telling you how sick you are. See? Making up words for new diseases and then new medicines, for those new diseases. And never once is it up there saying, your soul's perfect. You're not sick. Your body gets sick, but if you turned your mind healthy, then your body would probably stay healthy. See, they're not saying that to you. Turn your mind healthy, and since the body is a projection of the mind, won't your body remain healthy? But you can come into this body sick, like babies, sick babies, you see. Addicted babies. Crack parents and crack. You see, these are souls that passed their last lifetime addicted, and they're just coming back with the same baggage. But nobody's telling you this, and they'll hush that up, you see. So this path is a mental path, is my point. And you go in and you purify things at the source. The source is your mind. Yes, the ultimate source is the soul. But don't confuse it with the ego-mind mechanism anymore. Learn how to make a distinction between that which thinks and that which is beyond thought. You see? Because when you go into deep sleep tonight, you're not thinking anymore, are you? When you get into this deep sleep state, you see, even the vision of God, different forms of God, deities, gods, goddesses, whatever you want to call them, angels, celestials, ancestors, those are gone too. See, so you've transcended form, and you've gone into a deep sleep state, and that's where you're closest to God. You see, in deep sleep. Now you have to find some way in which you can open your third eye, or open your awareness to what you're experiencing there, because that's what the seers do. So they meditate on formlessness, you see. We might start with a form, like a mantra in a form, but then that will pacify their mind, you see, diminish their ego, you see, and their intellect will become honed, and it can pierce, you see. And when you've sat long enough like that, whether it takes you 40 days or 50 days on the mountain or under the bo tree, all of a sudden the light will dawn upon you. See? And at that moment you will know the difference between your ego and the Atman. See? Between reality and relativity. You'll know the difference. And you may have to revisit that in meditation for a while, because the mind, when it dawns again, when you come out of that state, then it brings back the mind and its thoughts and its samskaras and its karmas and your life and your family and your debts and all your sins. Although Swamiji said, there's no such thing as sin in India. It's just this ignorance that you're allowing to abide inside of you. He says, it's very nicely put, he said, we're really princes, but we're acting like beggars on account of this ignorance that's in us. We just remove that ignorance and then see yourself. Know the truth, and
the truth
will set you free. I mean, it's just a simple Advaitic statement cut in stone of ages. Or as the Muslims say, it's written in letters of molten gold across the pages of the Quran. And they're savoring these letters. They're not just seeing this as some sort of nice metaphor outside, you see, put it on some computer and make it move and animate. They're experiencing the real thing inside of them, you see. They're seeing Muhammad's words that's still echoing through the ages. They can find their way back to them and listen right at the source. See, just like you hike up a river and find the purest water. See, it's not that hard to do, but you have to take some effort and commit yourself. So some beautiful sayings from Shintoism, which I had to search for, and some sayings from Zoroastrianism, and some sayings from my own Swami Asheshananda, my own Guruji. And this is all by way of review of these slokas of chapter 5 of the Svetashvatara Upanisad. Now, Svetashvatara was a great rishi. Not maybe as ancient as Yajnavalkya and Pippalada and some of the writers or composers of the other Upanishads, a little bit more current. But and his couches some of his great non-dual truths in very poetic, beautiful poetic form. But this one chapter 5, and I'm going to read the few slokas that we took last week right now for you, so you can just savor it mentally. You'll hear it outwardly, but try and take it in and savor it mentally. That's why we have you memorize, you see, because memorization is kind of the step between those two. First, you can hear and be inspired and walk away, and it doesn't transform you. You see, that's happening all the time to people. In Christianity, a lot. And then see these evangelists on TV who are very good with words and inspire people, and then they just go back to their old lives, you see. Oh, I got inspired, I went to that talk. But they never became a seer themselves. See, they never became realized in their own right. They had to wait for the Savior to come 2,000 years later or something. That's not right, you see. Consciousness is here, now, in the moment. Your perfection is here, now, in the moment. There's no reason at all why you shouldn't wipe away everything in the way of that and be your true nature. There's nothing keeping you from that. That should be allowed, you see. So, savor this. The step between that is memorization. You might want to take, your favorite slokas and memorize them so you can take them in meditation without having to come out and look at the book, you see. You can just take them in there. I know probably several hundred of these by memory by now, you see. Over 40 or 45 years I've been practicing. So it's just something that you just feel yourself. You see, you can feel your own meditations. But if you have to stop, come out, get a book, read it, that's your study period. So between that hearing and contemplation, there's memorization. But when you get to contemplation, you should be savoring it. You should be all attention, like I was for him, Swami Sheshananda, when I sat in front of him. I didn't miss a word he ever said. I can say that with all honesty. That when I went to his talks, I was so galvanized by his being and so inspired by his wisdom that I sat on the edge of my seat and listened to everything he said and took it in, and got the transmission from him. See, got the transmission from the source. That's what we need to do. So here are a few of these slokas in chapter 5, leading us up to sloka 6, where we stopped last time. The very first sentences are savory. Ignorance leads to what is perishable. Wisdom leads to what's immortal. Let's put down the book now and just think about that for the rest of the class. Ignorance leads to what is perishable. Wisdom leads to what's immortal. Entirely different from these is the One, the imperishable, infinite, secret, supreme Brahman, in whom exists wisdom as well as ignorance, and who governs them both. Didn't we just say it went into my mind and I saw wisdom and I saw folly? So if we're working with the mind, we have to realize that it's dual by nature. Manas, it's called dual mind. And you have to make it single. You have to make your eye single. So you're working with something that's dual by nature. So you're going to have to find ways of transcending that duality, going beyond your own mind, you see. But we need to use the mind first to do that, you see. So you're using this great tool. To me, if you want a definition for mind, I would say it is the kingdoms of heaven within. You're thinking of it as a brain or an organ, but actually you should be thinking of it as a field of awareness that contains all of this: waking, dreaming, deep sleep, visionary, turi, and beyond. You see, it's a minefield, but it's also it's a minefield, but it's also a minefield. See, it's got mines in there that you step on will explode. There was articles back in the old Prabhupada Bharatas and Vedanta Kesharis of Ramakrishna order where they'd write this little beautiful saying out of the Upanishads, and they'd call it Vedantic thought bombs. You see. So you had this issue of Vedantic thought bombs you'd look for. We call it wisdom facets from the gem of truth in our magazine. But those are things to ponder, you see. So, yes, like poison exists in the snake, but the snake does not die, evil exists in Brahman, see, as potential. And it's going to take the mind to bring that out. See, I would say that if you want to bring out what's within you so that it won't destroy you, you're going to have to bring out the evil too. Deal with it. You cannot hide from it, you see. So it's not just the good you want to bring out, and let's leave the evil hiding back there. You want to bring that out and see it, you see. Because when you see it, then you'll be able to attenuate it, you see. You'll be able to neutralize it. Because it's cancerous. So you have things back in there that are causing you problems that you don't know about, and bring them out and look at them, expose them to the light, you see. It's like Sri Ramakrishna's story of the boil that forms on the skin, you see. And you go to a doctor and you say, will you lance that? And he touches it and it's kind of hard. You see. No, come back in 2 weeks, 2 days, and 13 hours and 15 minutes. And I'll lance it then. He's an expert, you see. So you go back at that time and it's all pussy and nice and bloated and everything's soft, you see. He sticks the lance, the what do you call it, scalpel in it. Lets all the poison out, you see. That's what you have to do with these negativities in your mind. If they come up around family, you're fecked. This is the Irish say, you see. You're imperfect, you see. But if these poisons come out around the Sangha and the Guru, and in your study and in your meditations, then you can neutralize them, you see. So there's a right timing to get to these things. You must have heard, you see, there's a time and a place for everything to occur, a season for all in which to happen. So that's in one of these scriptures, you see. So in that way then, Sloka 1 right away, we savor it, you see. So many things there. It's not just saying you're a good boy, don't be a bad boy or something, you know, or thou shalt not kill, see, because there's no such thing as death. So how can you kill anyone? So basically you're getting savoring right here, you see. Let's savor the second one. That Brahman alone presides over nature in all aspects and controls every form and every cause of production. Brahman witnesses the birth of the firstborn seer of golden color and nourishes that one with wisdom. So the note here from the Swami Chagishananda, is the firstborn seer of golden color means Hiranyagarbha, the cosmic egg, or the cosmic soul who projects the universe. So we're talking right there in that visionary state, you see. Brahman projects this, you see. And then these great souls will project the rest of their universe, all the way down to the element earth. See? It'll roll down in sets of fives, and then consciousness will come along and people it. Hear how Shintoism put it? See? There was, in the old times, there was this egg, and then it was one, and then it divided into two, and the finer part became heaven, the grosser part became earth, right? And then when heaven came first, earth came later, then it was peopled with beings, you see. So this is Maya's trick. It makes you look like evolution is real, like matter came first and consciousness later. But that's a big mistake that we make in the West. Consciousness preempts and pre-exists everything in matter. Anterior to life and mind is the soul. That's how it's put in the Mundaka Upanishad. Anterior to life and mind. Anterior means before, right? Is Atman. So consciousness is first, and then it produces all the worlds, and then it gets into the form. So it makes it look like the form is giving birth to consciousness. See? So our science, our biology, and so forth, we think of sperm, ovum, from food, you see. Then fetus, then baby is ejected from the womb, then begins to grow, then brain begins to form, and intelligence visits it, and then maybe later it starts to meditate on its own consciousness, as if consciousness were the last thing, you see. But that presence of consciousness was there before food was even produced, see, that produced the sperm and the ovum, see. It was the producer of food. There's a word for Divine Mother of the universe called producer of food, see. Yeah. There's several, Vasundari and Annapurna, and different goddesses that actually produce the food. They're the producer of substances. Sometimes she's called Dravya Shakti. Dravya Shakti is the producer of substances. So substances would be, we call it food because everything is food. Insects are food for other animals. You're food for wolves or fire, your body. Air is food for things that feed in it. Everything is food here. So they just pretty much call everything on the physical planet food. And then if you go inward, wisdom is food too. That's why you can savor it. See? Savor it and get nourished from it. See? Become whole by wisdom. It's a great path. I'd say it's the quickest and best path. That's what Swami Vivekananda said. You can follow the slower paths, but if you want to get quick in one lifetime to realization, follow this path of wisdom. Know yourself, and then bhakti and meditation and all these things will just happen naturally to you. See? You'll be able to savor them. But without wisdom there, how can you savor meditation? How can you savor devotion? Because there's still ignorance in there that's clouding it, you see. So you clear the mind first. It's basically the way of the Eastern paths, to clear the mind first. Clarify first, then intensify. And it's a perfect path then. It's without flaws. And it'll build you. It'll how they say, refine that diamond, you see. Make you a fisher of men. It's that kind of thing. Cut you in the image. All those kinds of sayings are there. Oh, the firstborn seer of golden color. Sloka 3, differentiating each genus into its species, and each species into its members, the Supreme Being withdraws them once more into their own ground. So it projects, but it also withdraws. Projects, they play a while, and then withdraw. That's all that's happening. It's not birth, life, and death. Those are just tongue-in-cheek terms. It's projection, sustenance, and withdrawal. And the sustenance is a kind of play of forms. Consciousness plays in the realms of name of forms. If it gets attached to the ego, then it's a problem. If it just lets the form play and then lets it go at the end, takes on another one, then where's the problem, you see? So people get attached, and that's called clinging to life, or fear of death. You know the 5 kleshas? Ignorance, egotism, attachment, aversion, and clinging to life, or fear of death. Clinging to life is the lowest hell you can fall into in yoga. The lowest hell is to fear death. So that's how stunned, how aghast they are when they look at you and say, "What? You fear death? What are you talking about? You were never born, so you can't die." You see, you got it all wrong. You see, it's all ass backwards, just like your evolutionary theory. You see, it doesn't have an involution to cover it, to complement it. Then you're just creating a disease without a remedy for yourself. Just like on the TV in the doctor's office yesterday. See? Just create a bunch of diseases. Only they're going to give you pills for remedies, you see. But it's all on the relative plane. You know nothing about the dynamics of your internal nature, so you're stuck out here. But if you knew these dharmic teachings, you'd be free immediately. See? And how much more you could savor life. You could savor every little thing, every thought, and every sloka. So it goes on here, bringing forth the agents of creation, the great soul holds sway over them all. So as it gets projected, everything, as it gets sustained and plays, and as it gets withdrawn, the great self, Atman, Paramatman, Brahman, stands back and watches that process as a detached witness. It's never involved. That's why John said, no one has ever seen God with these eyes, because it never got involved. So that's another great mistake we make, is to drag God down here into our troubles. Drag God down here into our comfort zones. Drag God down here into our everyday activities. God's not here. All of that is in God. See? So there again, you're going to have to make this distinction. You see, Maya, you have to turn everything on its ear, because Maya has turned it opposite. So you get it, and you turn it the other way. See? And you get some clarity. And immediately you get clarity, you get free. And then you have to revisit that state of freedom again and again until it settles in. And you'll never fall into ignorance again. See, there's no way that you will go back to the old way of thinking. This is fresh, this is new, this is original. This is primal. See. Sloka 4. Just as the sun shines, lighting up all spaces above, below, and across, even so does that one adorable Brahman, the repository of all goodness and greatness, preside over everything that has the nature of a cause. So you want to put it another way philosophically, is you want to see beyond cause and effect. And cause and effect, not just in physics, see, where one ball hits another and that moves. You see, two mosquitoes collide in the dense gases and that kind of thing. Not just that kind of cause and effect. You want to go into the cause of that cause. You see, so the cause of this is energy, right? Me moving my hand, you seeing me, you hearing my words, me speaking. That's prana. Man does not live by bread alone. So lives by something else, some energy that we don't see. And it's not electric and it's not kinetic. It's subtle energy, because it takes you into dream tonight too. When these turn off, that prana is gone, right? And it turns into a subtler prana that allows you to dream the same things tonight that you experienced in the waking state in the day. So there's a subtle energy you have to follow, you see. That's the involution process. And when you connect to that, you'll find it connected to the mind, and then the mind to the intellect, and the intellect to Om, see, the word. In the beginning was the word, right? So you'll find it all connected to the word, and then the word you'll find inside of yourself. You were looking like the musk deer, you see, you were looking all around for this wonderful fragrance. You finally find it all in yourself, see, the great self. So that's what he's talking about here in terms of Nirguna Brahman. So you see the beauty of this, you see. God is with form, God is beyond form, and God is beyond both form and formlessness as well. Who said that? Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said that. God is with form, God is beyond form, and God is beyond both form and formlessness as well. So that's, God is with form, God is beyond form, and God is beyond both form and formlessness. So as you get deeper and deeper in your own consciousness, you become consciousness. Everything else just dissolves like a hailstone in an ocean. And Ananda, you see. Hundreds and thousands of people have the last name of Ananda in this world. We've gone to India and met some of them. They're called monks. This Ananda, that Ananda. See, you wouldn't want to deliver a telegram to them. See, they'd all stand up. See, well, Mr. Ananda here? Yes, we're Ananda. I'm Ananda. No, I'm Ananda. See, who would you give the telegram to? So they're naming themselves after bliss. You see, this bliss that is the peace that passes all understanding. That's probably the closest Christian way we have of saying it. It's the peace that passes all understanding. So if it passes all understanding, then it must have surpassed the mind, because it's the mind which understands or not. Gets clouded or gets clarified, right? So it's beyond understanding. It's beyond the intellect. It's beyond knowledge. You put the raiment of knowledge on, Jesus said, or who was that? One of Jesus' followers, that was attributed to him. He put the raiment of knowledge on, and then, wore it like a crown, right, of joy. So that joy is, capital J, would be that Ananda in Sanskrit. Unalloyed, uninterrupted bliss of pure being. See? And Sri Ramakrishna went in for it and came out with it. I mean, very seldom do you see people come out with it. You go in for it, right? But Sri Ramakrishna would come out reeling. And they'd have to hold him up, He'd fall and break his arm if he went into a state like that and came out blissful. Just look at that beautiful image that was taken of him that Walt Disney Studios, Ramakrishna Order gave that image of Sri Ramakrishna to Walt Disney Studios, and they took out all the old specs in the old picture, 1800s, right, when photography was just infantile science. And then they came up with this fresh picture of Sri Ramakrishna. You can just see his eyes are like just swimming in this Ananda. You've never seen a face like that. It's the first time God was photographed. That picture was the first time God was photographed. So that's a quote from Swami Nityaswarupananda. I heard him say that once. We were sitting around one of the last living monastic disciples of Holy Mother. I was sitting with him at SRV National back east. And we were just sitting there at the table, enjoying silence, you see. All of a sudden, he looked at me, looked up to that picture on the wall and said, "You see that picture of the Master? That's the first time God was ever photographed." I remember that as clear as day. Remember that all my life. So when you see that picture, you see he's just swimming in this ananda, this bliss of pure being. No concerns, no worries, not even any happinesses or, relative joy. It's just this ultimate joy. And so that's Sloka 5. Did we get through it? Yes. And then we arrive at the last sloka we took last week. Last visit. Brahman lies hidden in the Upanishads. So what you're studying right now, you see, and trying to savor is that very principle of divine reality. Hidden here. Words are covering it. So you need to savor it, bring it out, right? Bring out the essence and think about it. Savor it like you would since we don't drink alcohol, fine wine isn't going to be a good metaphor, but like a very good vegetarian meal, you see. Savor it, you see.
Or Hawaiian honey.
Hawaiian honey, here we are. This nectar. So Brahman lies hidden in the Upanishads, which form the essence of the Vedas. Brahman, the Hiranyagarbha, knows as the source of itself. So this cosmic egg, this Hiranyagarbha, this Triputty, this Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, knows where its source is. You see, it stands right at the hub between form and formlessness. It looks down on all the worlds. If you're going to pray, you pray to that. You cannot pray to this, you see, because it doesn't have ears. You become one with that to know it. You can't pray to it. It's not a separate being from you, so you can't ask anything about it. But you can pray to the cosmos, the gods of the cosmos. You see, that's what people are really praying to. If Jesus has kept a form, a subtle form, for 2,000 years, I personally believe he's come back 4 or 5 times, but that would be a matter of contention for many people. But if he still hasn't come back for 2,000 years, then he's kept a subtle form inside, and millions of people are praying to that subtle form, you see. But they're not praying to the Almighty Father. My Almighty Father is beyond prayer and prayee, you see. That's the peace that passes all understanding. See, that's I and my Father are one, and very few people know that or know of it. Those gods and seers who realized Brahman in former days became identified with Brahman and became immortal. So these great seers that wrote these Upanishads, for instance, they became identified with Brahman. They didn't wait for saviors or any kind of form to. They got their teachers, they got clarified, they got wisdom, and then they identified with the formless and they became free. And they're free from ever since, you see. In truth, they were always free, but when they came into form, these coverings happened. See, cosmic, collective, and individual coverings. Collective are ancestors, see, angels and so forth. And there's a whole set of karmas that go with those, you see. And then individual, you know about that here, how many coverings there are over the light here, you see. How much you have to wade through, even to find a little peace in this world, you see. Although peace isn't as popular anymore as it used to be. Say we should bring peace back into the quotient. Get peaceful minds, because then our acts will become peaceful. Non-violent minds, then our world will become more non-violent. But otherwise not. So that brings us up in one half of a class to where we ended last time. And I wanted to re-show this chart because it's got a facelift. It's a bit new now with the new images. So I'll leave it here after the break if you want to look at it. And then live streaming audience can see it as we take our break for 15 minutes for some vegetarian prasad, refreshment. So here we will take our break and return. Thank you. And you are back with us at SRV San Francisco in this class at the very end of the Svetashvatara Upanisad. We're trying to finish up chapter 5 in this visit. There'll be a class today and then one tomorrow, also at 9:30. And then we'll be celebrating Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's birthday tonight in Puja. His actual birthday is next week. We'll be there up in Portland, worshiping there. So it's a doubly auspicious time in that regard. We get to follow the combined paths of jnana and bhakti, which is always a great combination. A 1-2 punch that puts ignorance to the mat for all times. If you can have devotion in your heart for the Lord, Mother of the Universe, and then also follow it up with this jnana yoga, or atma jnana, this knowledge of the self, which we started out talking about today and pointed to it as being very unique to the Vedanta. And mentioned how Swami Sheshananda would say that the West is always talking about a soul that's back of everything, those who are into religion, but they're really only pointing to the ego. The soul is transcendent of body-mind mechanism. So there are many very liberating and redeeming messages in Vedanta that we want to hear that will correct ways of thinking that we've fallen into in fundamentalist and dualistic religion that we've been raised in. Not that the non-dual hasn't been there, but it's just very rare to find souls that bring it out and can do so without some sort of recrimination against them, like Meister Eckhart in the early times. So his oneness with Christ, but the church didn't look very kindly on that. So I and my Father are one, or that thou art, those kinds of sayings have to be taken seriously and literally to mean that there is no real distinction or difference between the Jivatman and the Paramatman. Ultimately, they're exactly the same thing. That is the embodied soul and the transcendental soul. One is just conditioned, these upadhis that he was talking about, these coverings. And the purpose of life for the devotee or for the spiritual aspirant then is to pierce through or see through these coverings and get free. The quicker he or she can do that, the more a divine life and a dharmic life can be lived. And then eternal life can kick in. That is, eternal life is something that would be there for these ever pure souls. That when they do take bodies, don't have personal problems and individual problems to deal with. They're usually, like Lord Buddha, dealing with problems on the collective level, like ancestry and samskaras and past lifetimes, and trying to attenuate that for people so that they can shed themselves of a lot of that baggage and weight and be free and live a dharmic life. At least a dharmic life, better yet, a divine life. But as I said, eternal life awaits behind both of those. But as we were saying, you'll never be able to realize the real through the relative. You can't see Brahman through the Maya, so you're going to have to find ways to transcend the Maya, as if you would move around an obstacle to see what's behind it. Or as Swami Sheshananda again used to say, it's good bringing up his teachings today with this new chart I brought on him. Don't just idealize the real, realize the ideal. There's something to savor. Don't just idealize the real, like, oh God, it's so great, it's there, I believe, I have faith, and so forth. But realize the ideal. So he had some of these really beautiful ways of saying, like his great inspiration Swami Vivekananda did, and brought them forth into the English language in our day and time. This man was the man who just passed away in the 1990s, and I apprenticed him mentally and spiritually and took him as my teacher because I found that he had this unique way of both penetrating through himself, through the Maya, and also of presenting Vedanta in a way to Westerners that would free them. Again, this way of savoring things mentally. Contemplation is mental savoring, going inside and placing your mind on these and just tasting them as you would taste a good vegetarian meal. See. And come out with the essence of your experiences, not just live experiences and watch them float by without extracting anything from them. So that's all of that has been being put in the context of this chart we just looked at in these first 5 or 6 slokas. That is how Svetashvatara, this great rishi, is explaining to us the art of nirguna and saguna Brahman, and how even in our own states, from waking to dreaming to visionary to deep sleep to turiya, which means the 4th state beyond waking, dreaming, and sleeping, and even beyond the 4th state, I said in our own consciousness, every 24 hours, we are wending our way through these 5 states, you see, and back. There are also these barriers here. It's called Rudra Granthi, you see. There are Vishnu Granthi and Brahma Granthi. Many people can't move beyond earth in their consciousness, in their thinking consciousness. They only think about earth, air, fire, water, and ether, tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, smelling. That's all they think about. They're totally sense-bound and matter-bound. So there's a big membrane there, in your consciousness. It's like a veil, like this curtain of nescience here that comes off of her near the word. A very subtle thing to penetrate. That would be more in the deep sleep state, to try and penetrate that curtain of nescience. So there are these inner arts, these inner principles. As I was saying to one person in an email just yesterday, that higher states of consciousness also have their gradations. That's not a teaching that's been given out a lot. It's either, I'm here, now I'm gone, and I don't see anything that happens in between. But there are also gradations to consciousness at higher levels, and Gaudapada makes that pretty clear when he brings us this beautiful teaching of the 3 states of consciousness and how they go with the A-U-M of Om. A is the waking, U is the deep, is the dreaming, and M is the deep sleep state. And then this Turiya, this Shvara up here with the one-eyed smile, I call it, goes beyond waking, dreaming, and deep sleep into fully realized state, beyond form, but beyond form with awareness. There's beyond form not accompanied with awareness. That's like your blank meditation, you see, or your deep sleep state without knowing what's happening. But there's a beyond form that's accompanied with awareness. That's the curtain of nescience kind of teaching, you see. Those who go into deep sleep and don't see themselves as the dreamer and come back out and dream, and those who go in self and see themselves as a dream and see the deep sleep state, and in the deep sleep state see all the seeds for creation, preservation, and destruction there, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. See all the seeds for it there. Just be waiting to be pulled into manifestation to turn into the 5 elements and so forth, bodies and planets and names and forms in time and space, based in cause and effect. Maya, basically. So this chart is a really good coverall chart for the whole first 6 slokas of this Upanishad. Let's move on to the next sloka and read it. In fact, we did read it just before the break. Brahman lies hidden in the Upanishads. That's why I said at the break, this is a great, fine music, you see. Because in that music, if you play it properly, rightly, and pay attention to it, and then you'll find what's underlying it is this state of non-dual awareness called Brahman. Brahman, the Hiranyagarbha, knows as the source of itself. Hiranyagarbha could be Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, cosmic egg. They know that Brahman is its source. You see. They fall right at the cusp of the beginning of form, and then they stand at the very cusp of the word, which becomes formless. You see, so their consciousness can go either way. It could go into meditation and see Brahman, or it can come out and see the worlds. And great seers can do that too. They can remain aware of the world but not be attached to it. But then they can go into a deeper state of consciousness and actually see the light of Brahman and come out and then see the worlds again. And it doesn't distract them. They move easily between those states of awareness. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna said humorously, I used to always run a boat race between these centers. See? So between the fourth, fifth, and sixth centers of awareness, I was always running a boat race, he said. So his consciousness was like moving from state to state and then coming back to the lower state, going to the higher state. So he became very versatile at moving through these gradations of subtle awareness and could come back and tell us about them as much as words could say. Then, finally, those gods and seers who realized him in former lives become identified with him, verily become immortal. He is that one source of all the worlds and brings out everything according to its own nature. So that's where we wanted to look at this new chart. And let me call it up here on this device. It's a teaching called The Four Mighty and Noble Combats. And as I said, in the Gospel of Thomas, he said here, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, then what you do not bring forth will destroy you. So evidently Thomas heard Jesus giving that teaching and became a part of the Gospels there in the Bible. So that's a very profound teaching. It goes well with the teaching I was just giving about savoring wisdom mentally and how you want to, you have to come to know that there's some very dark places in your mind that you want to savor, like death. See? That's the kind of thing you want to bring forth and think about and savor it. See? Because, as I was saying, if you savor the thought of death, you'll find out ultimately the truth of the matter is that you were never born, so you can't die. You can't look at the soul and ever find a place where it began, and you can never find a place where it let off. Maya just makes it look that way, like waking, dreaming, deep sleep. Oh, I'm here now. Then I went into dream. Then I went somewhere I don't know. Then I came back to dream. Now I'm back waking, and I'm going through this 3 states of my awareness all the time. And that's my life, you see. But there's a time when I had a vision of God, you see. I saw the light. What was that? Where was that? Who was that? And who am I? I'm the one who's having that experience, and all of those were inside of me. All those states were inside me. So you become a knower of the self, self-realized, self-illumined. That's what's eventually going to happen when you entertain such a movement within you. See? And so that all came from meditating on death. You see, so it's very important that you bring out those things inside of you that are both negative and positive. Because if you just leave them, then you'll never reap the good, and you'll never be able to purify the negative. See, and there are people who make an art form of that. Patanjali mentions them in the Yoga Sutras. They just shirk pain and search for pleasure, basically. And pleasure isn't very deep, right? You don't have to get satisfied with it. The pleasure of any given thing gets old. See? And pain actually is a good teacher, so you're shirking the good teacher and you're entertaining these insipid pleasures, you see, and that becomes your whole lifestyle. And you see the world doing that, and everyone influencing each other to do that. That is, parents telling their children that's what they should do. And then the truth, is totally hidden under this cosmic upadhi of collective ignorance. It's just like one of these membranes we were just showing, right? Running along the bottom of that chart. It's just like that membrane, and nobody penetrates through it. They just stay there. Just like in some swamp, steeping. So that's why this saying is important. Now in Vedanta we find it said this way: what are the 4 mighty and noble combats? The battle to keep from waking the evil that is still yet unmanifest within you. The battle to repel the evil that is already in existence. The battle to awaken the good that is as yet still unmanifested within you. And the battle to preserve and develop the good that is already in existence. So these are the 4 great endeavors, or 4 great noble combats. You can see here Gopala, the baby Krishna, who conquered this 5-headed snake as one of his feats when he was a young baby. Did things like saved the village from the flood by lifting up a mountain and holding it as an umbrella over the village so that the village wouldn't be washed away. So if you go into the history, itihasa of baby Krishna, you'll find all these great feats that this little tiny toddler could accomplish. And this is one of them, is to find and master this five-headed snake. Here, I've put here the 5 kleshas that we mentioned in the first half, right? Ignorance, egotism, attachment, aversion, clinging to life are the 5 obstacles to spiritual life as given by the father of yoga. That is avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, and abhinivesha. Abhinivesha is fear of death or clinging to life. So those 5 are noted to be something that one has to transcend. Now you see there, with his arms, he's in the breadth of his arms spread. His projection, sustenance, and dissolution are there at his beck and call. So there you would see Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, right? As we just saw here. So this great soul is got, as the Upanishad just told us, has got control over these cosmic principles at a very high level. Like here, he presides over nature in all its aspects, controls every form, every cause of production, and witnesses the birth of the firstborn seer of golden color. So that would be Hiranyagarbha. The Swami here comments, that means Hiranyagarbha. So nourishes that one with wisdom. So Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva would get all their wisdom from this great soul. This Prajapati, this teacher of the gods, they call him sometimes. The gods also need a teacher. So there you see, first battle, the battle to awaken the unmanifested good within. We want to definitely bring that out. It'll enrich our lives and also benefit the world if everyone were to take up that battle and bring that out, instead of, say, bring out the quotidian or the conventional or, the mixed, good and bad. If they all concentrated on this Dharma mega samadhi, the big huge rainstorm out there. So we started off the first half likening that to this big rainstorm inside, that when it starts to pour with divine virtues, that the soul is there like a thirsty bird, a chatak bird, ready to drink from the ocean of virtues, that rain cloud of virtues. So that would be a way of bringing out the good that's within you. So you can't really bring out the good that's within you unless you know it's there, right? And if you're being told that you're a sinner, then you don't think there's any good inside of you. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna would say, a man should never be told he's a sinner. He should be told of his internal innate perfection. See? And then by that he can raise himself up by his bootstraps, as they say. So he can take the good within him and transcend everything else. In the meantime, he's also battling to preserve the good that's already in existence. So it's a vigil you're on, here in the body, in human form, and with the masses. The masses mean all sorts of ignorant beings and very few enlightened beings. And then a lot of beings who are just good souls, who have sort of a heaven, earth to hell kind of trajectory, that have been taught by fundamentalist or dualistic religion to think that they're going after death to some place and coming back. And because of this teaching, they're not realizing the perfection that's in them right now. See? My teacher used to call that a post-mortem emancipation. He said, I don't care for a post-mortem emancipation, he would say. I'm not waiting until after death to realize my freedom, because freedom is right here, right now, at all times. And I and my father are one. You see, in his case, I and my mother are one, Mother Kali. So, wanted to realize that perfection right now in life. And that's why I named this, because I actually saw this man and learned from him and spent time with him. That's why I named this Key Teachings, Mental Asanas of Swami Sheshanandaji, Advaita Vedanta in a Jivan Mukta. Jivan Mukta is a living, liberated soul. So what I saw in Swami Sheshananda was a living, liberated soul, and what he was practicing was Advaita Vedanta, that is, non-duality. So that was a great privilege for me to be in the presence of that and to see that, and to see it put into manifestation in a living soul. So you can hear about it. So that's why he would say, don't just idealize the real, right? Realize the ideals, as he himself had done that. Just wasn't happy just to stand back and state the truth and, and then have faith that it existed, but he actually dove into it, mentally savored it, see, and realized it. Shravana, manana, nididhyasana. Nididhyasana means to realize what you have heard through study. So that's this internal life that I'm talking about. I would venture to say that very few people have an internal life nowadays. Very few. And that's why when I spent a lot of time with the monks of the Ramakrishna order, I saw people that did. In fact, that's why I was saying most of the monks are pretty much focusing on gaining back, if they've lost it, an internal life. But Christ wanted, to get a real life for his apostles. But amongst the householders, very rare to find somebody who has an internal life, who's practicing adamantly, and who sees God as more important than the world. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy soul, all thy heart, and all that kind of thing. You see, what happened to that? Well, you've replaced it with love for the world, and the two are different, you see. Brahman is real, the world isn't. Brahman Satya, Jagad Mithya is the famous saying. Brahman Satya, Satya means true, right? So Brahman is true. Jagad, the world, is Mithya, false. So why are you spending so much time engaging and encountering the world? If you're a monk, that works. But if you're a householder, then what you're going to have to do is complement that time you spend with the world with this rejuvenating wisdom teachings, you see, the Dharma. You have to bring that into the mix. And then pretty soon the balance will shift to such a degree that you can be masters of life. You see. We meditate upon those three great beings who are masters of life, remover of the miseries of the devotees. May they be pleased to accept our offerings. It's like mantra in the Ramakrishna Puja we'll do tonight. See? Meditate upon those three great beings who are masters of life and remover of the miseries of the devotees. So that's going to be enjoined upon you to do that. So if you see that good manifest anywhere around you, like I saw it in Swami Sheshananda or in the Vedanta societies and so forth, then I had to battle to preserve it, you see. I had to use whatever resources were at my command to keep it in existence. That's why I'm here now sharing it with you, you see. Because I want to foster it. I think it's that important, or the most important thing, to be able to share. And I have it on good authority. Sri Krishna, the very last slokas of the Gita, he says that. Those who share this wisdom with my devotees, I consider them to be the greatest of all souls. So we have to, if I saw Swami Sheshananda sacrificing, leaving his country, never going back, working with these materialistic Americans, trying to create some sense of Dharma in them, waking them up to the spiritual possibilities for 50, 60 years, then I'd say that's a deep enough sacrifice that I should follow suit, you see, and help preserve the good that's already in existence, the good that he brought here to America. First to New York, then to California, then up to Oregon. So that's just an example, and personal example for myself. All of you will meet exemplars of goodness, and beneficence, the highest goodness, and you'll want to get behind that and support it too. So that's a twofold battle, you see. in order to preserve the good that's already in existence, you're going to have to look for the good that's within you, right? And in fact, the two work with each other, sometimes opposite of each other. You're going to realize that I cannot help keep the good in existence until I myself gain strength, right? As you go forward to try and help something, isn't it the case with altruism? You go forward and try to feed somebody, or, you do away with disease or so forth, and you find you don't have the strength to do it after a while, that you fail. Like Swamiji said, you go and feed one half of the world, the other half will starve. And you run over to that half and feed that half, and this half will start starving again, you see. So you're already working in a dual theater, you see. And you haven't realized that that balance is going to be there. This is one of the teachings we had in the first half that was so powerful around this statement of Thomas, who by the way, is that great apostle that came to India and founded that church down in Chennai, South India, where we'll go next December. We'll see that. But that's one of those great teachings that bring out this negativity in your mind in order to neutralize it, or else if you leave it lying fallow, it's going to come up at the wrong time. See? Like lancing a boil before it's ready. See? So we have to bring it up in the light of the teaching. So this is working for both your good and the good of others. So it tends to transcend just an altruistic arena. See, it tends to go towards the highest spiritual good of all beings. Because you cannot, like Swami Vivekananda said, you cannot go and do away with hunger in my country and then walk away. You have to go there, do away with hunger, and then give them tools and teach them how to farm, then walk away, right? Because they'll just get hungry again. And even with tools and farming, there'll be a drought come and so forth, and they'll be hungry, even when they know how to create food, you see. So then you're going to have to give them higher wisdom. He wanted to go around India with a globe of the world and walk into every village hut and show them the world. As he called them all frogs in the well. See, you don't know what's happening out there in the world. You're just here in your little hut in this little village. So how can you bring out the goodness within you and help others if you don't have this great concept of what's going on? You see? So you have to go out and teach them by degrees. You cannot give wisdom to starving people, he said. They don't have the energy to digest it, what to speak of even hear it and pay attention, right? You're going to need all your facilities gathered together. You're going to need all your powers, and your powers are going to have to have gotten over these negativities before you can help anyone, what to speak of help yourself. And the world, he said, is full of people who are trying to help others before they're perfected, before they're ready to, and making a worse mess out of things. So that's why altruism has this downside to it. It's a very good tendency, but it would be better served if you were fighting these two battles and winning. See, these great combats have to be kept first and foremost in your mind. As you could be fighting these battles at work with a dishonest boss, or an evil corporate entity. You see, you could be fighting these very battles, and you're going to have to win. And of course, these are pretty obvious: the battle to keep from waking the evil within, and the battle to repel the evil already in existence. Must go in mate with these two. Because the great teaching of Vedanta is to go beyond both good and bad, beyond pain and pleasure, beyond life and death. As long as you're still working in the arena of the dualities, then you're subject to the dualities. He who has evil also has good. He who has wisdom also has ignorance. So you're aware of both, So eventually you're going to have to work your magic, your spiritual practice on dualities like this and transcend them both like he has. The eternal child there, the divine child, Gopala. So that chart is actually, with its two quotes and those four listings, quite simple to understand. And of course, you have the great teaching of the Trinity here, of preservation, sustenance, and dissolution. That is, that these cycles are eternal, and as long as you're in them, you're going to have to stay on vigil all the time. It's not something you can rest, take a vacation from. See? Because that's right about the time when this evil will come up. You see, it's all set up nicely to go off right when you're not looking. You see, so you don't want to let down your guard. Again, Rabindranath Tagore had that beautiful song where he sang that, I stayed awake all night, O Lord, to hear your knock at my door. I knew you were coming, so I stayed awake all night. And then somewhere around 2 or 3 in the morning, I just snoozed for 5 minutes. That's when you knocked. So that vigil has to be constant, and it can't renege or let down on it. Not when you have such a high ideal at risk. You're putting a high ideal at risk. That's the most important thing to you. You have to follow through with it. Your commitment has to be 100%. So that in accordance with this 5th and 6th sloka. Now, when you talk about former days, he said, these gods and seers who realized Brahman in former days became identified with Brahman. Now, that's infers or intimates that they believe in past lifetimes. And so when the Westerner reads a sloka like this, and they're going to look at that and say, maybe not understand because they haven't been raised in an ideology or in a philosophy that includes reincarnation and rebirth as a part of its teachings. See, in India, this is just accepted across the board for thousands of years, but in America, it's like a new idea to most people. See, and some people, I went and taught at a few colleges lately, and Christian colleges, and people there, and they didn't know what I was talking about, and they wouldn't accept it. You see, that they've lived before, that there have been other births. An interesting idea, but I don't believe it. So it's like one lifetime heaven or hell kind of thing, and if that's what you want to believe, good luck with that, as they say. But it's much more practical and much more sensible to, especially when you look into these battles, to find out that there are things inside of you that are there not because of anything you did in this lifetime. There's just, you would have to figure in an unjust God into the quotient, or a partial God, in order to believe that he's visiting some sort of karma on you that wasn't deserved. See, so it's probably better not even to bring Brahman into that arena. But that aside, you can definitely believe in the existence of previous births where you had done these actions which are now fructifying in the present time. See, Swami Vivekananda used to say that, is that you just look in the mirror at yourself, and your features and the way you conduct yourself and the way you think and act and the way you look is all based upon what you did in previous lifetimes. You are what you thought and what you did previously. And that's the cards you're bringing to the table now, see, in this lifetime. And that's the best way to know yourself, at least to start off knowing yourself, is to know that your karmas have manifested. Rebirth is manifested karma. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. If you didn't have any karmas, you wouldn't come here. Karma means desire to enjoy. Karma means evil actions you did that didn't get recompensed, you see. All sorts of things are karma. Karma is a broad term. It's not just a moral, ethical, good and bad kind of quotient. It's cause and effect we're talking about, like was mentioned in this last sloka. He presides over everything that has the nature of a cause. So there is a God of karma that's watching all this, and there are powers in motion from the Trinity on down to these other deities that are just naturally distributing the fruits of karma to people. Good, bad, and mixed. It's a natural process. And nobody escapes it. It's inscrutable. That word was used by Holy Mother. Karma is an inscrutable law. Nobody escapes it. You have to pay for the use of this body to the last farthing. a farthing is an English coin, you see. So she was aware of the English, no doubt, at that time. So there's something to savor, you see. But you could say that's not all negative. It's not all positive. Karma is a very mixed principle. So, you must entertain it in your mind, because if you do, then you'll find out why you're suffering now, or you'll find out why one person has, great qualities and another person has none. See? And you won't be able to, with any good conscience, attribute it to an unjust God or an impartial God. You wouldn't accept a God like that. That just dispenses, like, sort of serendipitously. See, it has to follow a certain law of order. And so that karmic law you're looking into. So that really also points us right back to this teaching of these battles that you have to entertain. Now, but if you look deeper into the teaching, then you would come towards this idea of future lives. If I had past lives, then I'll probably have future lives. So what I want to do here is situate myself in the world, in the mind field, this field of karma that everyone's, including the ancestors and the gods, are all laboring under. Anyone in form has a karma. And that karma has predicated their form and has created their form. And now they're experiencing more karma inside that form. And it can be a very sticky wicket, speaking of English, to get caught in that kind of karmic web and not be able to get free. And what is more, you get caught in a web of good karma too. That is a moral, ethical karma that doesn't get you on to higher teachings, that allow you to get beyond the duality of good and bad. Good, bad, and mixed is a real web of karmic propensities that you have to deal with at some point. So if you are engaging in some sort of a spiritual practice, which you should be, with an end to liberate yourself from these bondages, then you're going to probably want to paint a palette for yourself of future lifetime. Now, right on the wall behind Powell there is Dalai Lama, who is supposed to have had some 14 or so conscious lifetimes. I mean, there's a person among us today in a traditional religion of Tibet that makes no bones about having lived many lifetimes. And not only that, has lived many enlightened lifetimes. And any fool can walk up and say, I believe in reincarnation and I've had 1,000 stupid lifetimes. And I'm still stupid, you see. But there's very few people who can walk up and say, yeah, 14. I'm on my 15th now, if I come back again. The Red Chinese have taken my country, so I'm probably not going to come back. But anyway, whatever the case may be, the people amongst us who have lived this way have, in their past, predicated their future lives on their wisdom, on knowledge, on higher wisdom. So if you want to look at that for a minute, you see some of the aspects of it.
I've never really thought about it.
Well, you should. Glad you're thinking now. My talk must be working. So there's the quote at the top by Sri Sharda Devi, that is my teacher's teacher, and Sri Ramakrishna's wife. She says, human being, today it is, tomorrow it is not. No one will accompany a person after death. Only actions good and bad follow, even after death. The result of karma is inevitable, but karma's effects can be counteracted greatly by japa and austerities. Those are concomitants of that sadhana that we're talking about. If you do some repetition of the Lord's name, put yourself through some austerities like meditation and study and so forth, then these karmas can be counteracted and you can neutralize them and get free of them in this very lifetime. So you're not walking around anymore as some sort of time bomb of karma in you, ready to go off at any point, you see. Or maybe not. Maybe predicate another lifetime, it'll go off in your next lifetime. So there are basically, traditionally, let's say, three kinds of karma. There's sanchita, that's karma from past lifetimes. There's prarabdha karma, which is karma from this lifetime. Yeah, that's not actually the chart. There's some dynamics of it. And then there are, it's called agami karma, karma in the future. Now it stands to reason, if you think of cause and effect and karma, that if you were to annul your karma in this lifetime, that future karma wouldn't arise. You could do away with agami karma, karma in the future. You either wouldn't be born, or you would be born in a karmaless state, like these great souls. So that's kind of the ideal, both for many monks and for the householders, is to be born free. Not only lions that could be born free, see, humans should be born free too. So in order to do that, these karmas are going to have to be annulled, and the best thing to annul them is practice. Now, that's what she says in that quote. Now let's look at some of these palettes. Attaining Jivan Mukti in a past lifetime. So remember that chart I just showed you, Swami Sheshananda? Advaita Vedanta in a Jivan Mukta. So there was a man I saw who was a Jivan Mukta, living liberated soul, and he in a past lifetime had gained his liberation, or working on the final vestiges of gaining that liberation in this lifetime, and achieved it, you see. So, for instance, in Buddhism, there are 10 lands of Buddhism called the 10 lands of a bodhisattva. And if you gain the first land, then you're born free of karma in your next lifetime. But you work on the next higher lands of consciousness, and you're trying to attain them, so you perfect yourself at a very high level. See, I mean, all the old karmas are gone. You're not bound anymore. You're not under the sway of the passions and the fetters and the usual things that people suffer. But you are trying to perfect yourself more and more as a living liberated soul. So there are actually gradations to that, 10 of them. 10 pure lands, they're called. And some great bodhisattvas have attained the 8th and the 9th and even the 10th, like Lord Buddha. But others are still working on these lesser lands. So in that way, you're going to want to think in these terms. You're going to want to think of future, of freedom. See, now true freedom exists now and at all times, but you haven't realized that yet. So you're going to have to set it up so you will realize it. And this lifetime is the best time to do that, because this is the lifetime you've become aware of it, right? You've become aware that there is such a thing as freedom beyond the form. It's called kaivalya, freedom from nature. Because let's make no mistake about it, nature is the form producer, right? Mind and nature together are producing forms, and consciousness is visiting those forms. It's about the simplest way you can put it. And when it visits those forms, it becomes habituated to those forms, like squirrels and monkeys and human beings. They get comfortable in the form, and they get attached to that particular form, and then when it comes time to give it up, they can't. And then they're pulled out of it against their will with great fear, and that's how they die. And this is the case with a greater percentage of people. Remember Swami Sheshananda saying, we're really princes, but we're acting like beggars because of this ignorance of our true nature. All of our life we've been acting like beggars. But all of our life we should have been acting as if my soul is free. And even if I haven't realized it, if I take on the thought that I'm free, then it's something that I've introduced into my thinking consciousness, and I can measure myself up to it, right? I can cut myself in the image then. See? So I first have to entertain that thought, like that mental savoring I'm talking about, you see. Scriptures are pointing to it with every sentence they put down, you see. Every sentence you read, they're pointing to that perfection of yours. That's the main reason for them composing a scripture in the first place. It's not to put their name on it and become famous. They've transcended the realm of name and form, you see. That's for relative aims. They want people free, and free in that very lifetime. So this gaining of Jivamukti is important. How about selecting a country and culture of your own choice? How about assuming gender and physical body? Somebody wrote me recently about being a male or a female in past lifetimes and coming lifetimes, and I said, yes, it's true. Most people who are males will be born males, and most people who are females will become females, because that's what you've become actuated by and habituated to, is that particular form, so you get used to that. And then in some cases, people will take on forms. Speaking of Dalai Lama, I think he even made a comment lately that he might be born as a woman next lifetime. So if you have that kind of command of your consciousness, you can take on any form you want, you see, and utilize it for a particular goal in life that you have. And of course, the goal of a liberated soul is going to be to liberate others, whereas the soul of an individual seeker is going to be just get freedom myself. So I need to get freedom for myself. And then, of course, the goals of people who have no idea that freedom even exists, that there is such a thing as a pure and perfect soul, have not come up and met a great soul like that yet. Of course, they're all relative goals, and those are fraught with karma. So both country and gender are selected by the soul prior to their birth. And those who are good choosers, you see them out there with good parents, good upbringing, and comfortable in their bodies and so forth. They're doing their work, you see. And those who are not so good choosers, they've had these issues, you see, because of past lifetimes and karma and so forth. So they're having these issues with these very selective process. That also applies to choosing dharmic parents prior to entering the womb. That's why a lot of souls who are enlightened, will be born in India or Tibet, China and so forth. You're going to find parents who have heard the words of the great souls and have gotten liberated. So they're going to be looking for dharmic parents. And this is, there are people who are aware of this even now. I have a student up in Portland who walked up to me just recently and said, my aim in this life is to get dharmic parents next lifetime. I won't accept anything less than that. That's my prayer, that's my aim, that's my goal. Because if I don't get born with dharmic parents, I'll never get free. I'll never hear this truth. And this truth has been the one thing in this life that I've heard that's freed me. Not music, not knowledge. None of that has freed me. It hasn't transformed me. It might have bettered me and helped. But when I heard the Dharma, I was free, you see. When I heard about my true nature being pure and perfect, that freed me. As I said in the first half, that's the one thing that will turn you into a non-dualist. And it may take years or decades, or it may happen right away, depending on your conditioning, you see, or lack thereof. Freedom from conditioning is the best thing. The Buddhists have that whole system of the 9 nidanas of conditioning, that you get conditioned through your life, and it's going to take you 3 lifetimes to undo that conditioning, they say. And they have a whole system that's set up. 1 lifetime to realize you're bound, 1 lifetime to practice the Dharma, and 1 lifetime to live free. That's your bodhisattva lifetime. I'm a free soul, finally, So you live that 1 lifetime as a free soul. And then you can have a choice whether to come back. But if you do come back, you can come back illumined, or you can come back dragged by the weight of your karma, against your will. You wake up out of the womb, hanging upside down with the doctor swatting you on your bottom, and your first mantra is wah, wah, you see. And then you have to engage in years of searching and finding a teacher to change wah into om, you see. And then you finally have a mantra that's worthy of you. So you wake up into this world either in an illumined state or in a bound state. Or you could say, they asked Buddha that, aren't those who are seeking, aren't That's the third kind of person. But Buddha said, no, the ones that are seeking are already free. So that was a very beautiful thing he said. There aren't three kinds of people. There are the bound and there are the free. What about those who are seeking? He said, those are already free. So as soon as you hear the truth and you've been seeking it, you're already free. That's a good way of thinking of it, you see. I mean, talk about bringing out the good that's within you, right? And manifesting the good and keeping the good that's there. That's going to help you in those battles. And just knowing already that the soul is free is tantamount to being free. It's a mental asana that you take on, a mental position that you take on, and you don't give it up until you realize it. It helps you in life to realize what's beyond life. So very important to have dharmic parents. Few others are there. Spiritual practice and attainment in previous lives. So that's going to demand that you start practicing this lifetime. See, I want to better myself spiritually in this lifetime, not just physically by pumping iron, and not just mentally by going to school, and not just intellectually by taking a couple philosophy classes, and not just philosophically and so forth, but I want to better myself spiritually. And there are specific practices for that you do. A lot of people just really don't know about them. Meditation being one of them. That's gotten around a little bit into public sector. Well, I do a meditation practice, you see. Or I do some hatha yoga. And so there are various shades of a holistic practice, like an 8-limbed practice that you should take on, that are there, that you can borrow from. But the commitment that it takes to realize them, and the ability and power it's going to take to synthesize them, bring them together into one whole, holistic teaching, that's rare. And that's what it's going to take to walk the razor's edged path. Arise, awake, stop not till the goal is reached. Approach the wise teachers and learn from them. For difficult indeed, sharp as a razor's edge, is the spiritual path, and difficult to navigate, so say the wise. Right out of Brahman is hidden in the Upanishads, right? Right out of the Upanishads. So, Utistata, Jagrata, Prapya, Varoni, Bodhata, Bodhata, intelligence. Realize those things. Approach a great teacher and get free in this lifetime, you see. And then you can have dharmic parents, if you have, come back. You can choose your country. Be born in a beautiful country, you see, with hills and forests and snow. Or you can be born in a desert with no water. There are good places and not so good places to be born. How about being born in a war zone? Does that sound fun? Because that's happening to thousands of babies now. So get yourself free, then go out and free others. You can arrange your life circumstances in order to neutralize karma. So that's this, predication we're talking about. That would be, an empty canvas in your mind that you want to create. You want to paint over, you see. That's going to be one of the things on your wish list as a spiritual aspirant that you're going to want to attain in this lifetime. And no God's going to give it to you, and no devil's going to keep you from it. You see, you have to abandon those kinds of thinkings and just predicate it all on self-realization. This is my own doing. The karma was my own doing. The neutralizing the karma is going to be my own doing. Nobody did it to me. Nobody's going to do it for me. It's all mine. It's all mine. And that's taking responsibility, spiritually speaking. And it is the healthiest way to proceed. The most sure and certain way to make progress is that way. And it doesn't leave you dependent on anything else, or bound to anything else. You bound yourself, you free yourself. But all along you know that you're ever free. See? So this is a kind of mental posture that you just assume. It's a given. It's a spiritual given. Experiencing a conscious death at the end of a last lifetime is right there. See? So want to make sure you shed all that baggage in this lifetime. You're not carrying anything with you. Better to do that, Holy Mother says, when you're young, because when you get old, it gets harder to shed those habits and those tendencies that have collected around you like cobwebs, some of them even unbeknownst to you. So you're going to want to keep the playing field clear of karma and the cobwebs out of the mind, and you're going to want to go step by step, breath by breath, to death. And that's why if you meditated on death early on, when you had the energy to do so, and you put death in its place, my teacher said you put death in its own grave, see? Then you won't have to worry about that later. See? Or you can follow the method, and we're familiar with this too, is just getting used to death a little at a time. First, your mortality scares you, you see. And then you entertain death at a little deeper level, and you read the scriptures, and you find out that your soul is not subject to death, and that makes sense to you. So then you go back to your mortality again and measure that up to your mortality, and it attenuates that a little bit, and you have less fear around your mortality. Then you begin to have experiences in dream and deep sleep, and those convince you that you don't die. So that you can lay down right now, quit breathing, get out of your mind like you do in sleep, and live inside. You live inside. So the body makes no never mind to that state, unless you're attached to it. Then it can ruin that state, as it's called being a materialist or essentialist. So all of these things put together, there are ways and methods by which you acclimatize yourself to not only higher levels of consciousness, but to the obstacles in the way, like death and fear and doubt. I mean, talk about the curtain of nescience, right, that we saw back here on this chart. See? Lord Shiva says that curtain of nescience consists of fear, doubt, and fear of death and doubt, and that the curtain gets expanded by brooding on fear and doubt and attachment. Fear, doubt, and attachment. So those actually consist of the curtain of unknowing in your mind. Fear, doubt, and attachment, see. So that gets thickened when you brood on them. And when you don't think about them and put them away, you see, dissolve them in your meditation, then it thins. And the curtain of nescience doesn't, this Rudra Granthi then is not so hard to pass through when you're passing beyond the realm of the ancestors at the time of death. Otherwise you'll get caught in the realm of the ancestors, Lord Buddha says. And that's often not such a good ride to take. You've taken it so many times already, in most cases. I mean, you can have good ancestors and good ancestry and so forth, but there's also pride of ancestry. That's one of the great fetters. There's 8 fetters, and one of them's pride of ancestry, pride of lineage. So that can kick in on the good side and keep you from transcending your ancestors. See? So you'll never know what's beyond the ancestors, and you'll never know your true self, which is formless, which is worldless. It's beyond worlds, you see. That's why Swami Sheshananda was saying they just drag themselves from heaven to earth to hell with the ego. But give up the ego and realize the true self. Swami Sheshananda said that many times, echoing Holy Mother. All right, so we're talking here, wrapping up this chart in the last few minutes, setting up the manifestation of one's work and mission in life. A lot of people, of course, aren't aware of their mission when they first get into the body. That's actually quite natural. Even Jesus and Buddha and beings like that probably didn't know why they were there in their early age, and then it became clear to them at a young age. Jesus, like in his teens, he left his parents. When his parents went looking for him, he found him on the steps of the temple, you see, and he was talking to the rabbis and so forth. And, "Where have you gone, son?" And he said, "Where do you think I've gone? I've gone to be about the work of my father." So he left home. See. And there are many, many souls in India like that who left home in their very young age, even before preteen, as they already had woken up to the idea of why they had taken a birth, you see, and they had a mission, and they immediately remembered and put themselves onto that mission. Now, that wouldn't have been possible if they had have had these karmas in the way. Attachment to family, attachment to ancestors, debts to pay, you see, and having to take care of parents and all that. But these beings just put aside all of that and walked away, you see. And it'd probably be frightful for most people today to think about that. But this happens quite often, and those are the beings who become greatly realized and become highly revered in world religions. And nobody says then, oh, he was no good, he left his parents, you see. He had to get away from them. So, in that sense, you set up in that way, too, your future lives. It's a very important thing. Finally, down here in the bottom, non-dual perspective that transforms all appearances into reality. It's going to be a very high attainment, but that's that, living in non-duality. Also, sincere compassion to help all beings gain spiritual emancipation. So put these two together and you have a soul that's absolutely free but still has compassion for others. Because there are souls that are absolutely free that don't have that much compassion for you. They think that you're fools. And they say, why are you still kicking a dead horse down there on earth? See? Why don't you just get free? And I'm not going to spend any more time on you. See? But there are souls that will actually be born and try and free you and spend their whole time and their whole life, their life's blood, as it were, to help bring you to a state of your own original freedom, back to your original nature that you've fallen away from. So the idea of fallen from grace is there in all religions. Even in Vedanta, it allows for it. But in Vedanta, it allows for it by way of forgetfulness only, not by sin. The soul cannot be marked by sin. So that's a beautiful teaching in Vedanta. You're not sinful, you're divine by nature. Liable of liable, it's the worst sin to call another man a sinner, said Swami Vivekananda. So that's again another mental perspective or asana you take, you see. And that way you will return to your intrinsic divine nature, naturally. It's there, you just have to remember it in that case. So these two are very important. Now, to wrap it up here, let's take Lord Vashishtha's teaching on this. Ego plus mind plus intelligence and adding in the five senses make up this temporal unit called the psychophysical being. That's Sri Krishna's way of putting it too. He called it pure astika body, five senses with these threefold mind complex. When considering it and its powers, we must remember that when these eight forces are kept in a pure state, then Kundalini Shakti loves to sport in this amazing form. So he's saying there, the five senses and the mind, threefold mind, intellect, ego. If it's kept in a pure state, Divine Mother likes to get in and sport in it. She likes to play in it. And she does very miraculous things. If it's not kept in a pure state, she stays away from it. And that's really the difference between awakening, being awakened spiritually, and being asleep. It's whether Mothers awaken you. You want to know more about that? I'm giving a retreat on it in Seattle, weekend after next. It's called Kundalini Shakti and Sri Ramakrishna's. And so if you want to come up to Seattle and take 2 or 3 days of teachings on that, we'll focus on that, the awakening of this Divine Mother power in you that comes up the spine and enlightens all the centers, from the 3 lower ones to the heart, to the throat, to the third eye, and to the crown, and turns a being into a being with conscious future lives, if they want to take lives at all. So they have a choice whether to be born or not. They're not dragged there against their will. Now, to kind of wrap it all up, a humorous story from Sri Ramakrishna, which is very very interesting to savor. It's both funny, but it's also kind of a slap in the face if it catches you blindside. He says here, the potter puts his pots in the sun to dry, both the baked and unbaked ones. A cow happens to walk over them and breaks some of them. The baked pot shards that are broken, the potter throws away. But the soft ones, though broken, he gathers up and shapes them into a lump. From this lump he forms new pots. In the same way, so long as a man has not realized God, he will have to come back to this earth and to the potter's hands. See? Do you get it? Is it obvious to you? Using just these everyday scenes he saw in village life. You know, he was always thinking about God, so when he saw something like that, it could be cows walking to a field, or it could be a camel eating thorny bushes, or whatever, he would immediately assign a spiritual significance to it. And that's why I put out that book of Ramakrishna stories, about 700 or 800 of them, with little commentaries, so that it can explain those little vignettes he saw in life, and how to interpret them and realize them. So in this one, you know, if you're a baked pot, good for you, you see. And if the cow steps on you, great. That's the idea. You're broken and you're not going to be formed into a new pot again. In other words, you've transcended the desire to come back to earth. Now this is, you know, it's particular to Vedanta and yoga in India. No other religion thinks that not coming back to the earth and the body is a good thing, you see. Only India thinks it's not a good thing to come back to the body. And so maybe little mentions in other religions about it, but that's why they savor the negative. They like emptiness. They like formlessness. They like death, ponder death. Everything there that other beings brush under the carpet, India has brought out and made a philosophy out of. For your betterment, for your enlightenment, see? Because you have to know both Brahman and non-Brahman. Who said that? The Divine Mother of the Universe in the Devi Upanishad. Yes, there are even Upanishads named after the goddess. She said, you must come to know Brahman and non-Brahman both. See? So it's not like you shirk away from one and just go to the other. Like, I want all realization and leave the world behind. You take it all up with you. You see, the whole thing is one reality. It always has been, always will be, and never was not one homogeneous state of pure conscious awareness. Now, where along the way did I forget that, you see? What lifetime was I not aware of that? When did I fall out of cognizance of that fact? And now, who's going to come along to bring it back to me, you see? And hopefully I'll never forget it again, you see, because when I fell into forgetfulness around it, I suffered, you see. And that suffering was unreal, and it was unnecessary, both. It's like darkness in a cave. It had no substance, you know. Resist not evil. See, it's not real in the first place, so I should have never fallen out of truth in the first place. And if I did, when I got back, I have to remember. And if I had contemplated and savored all my negative experiences, I would remember, right? They would be like whips, ignoble whips of pain, you see. Say, don't do that again, you see. Don't fall out again. Don't forget to remember your Divine Mother's teachings, you see. So, if you're a baked pot, great. You got stepped on by the cow of Brahman, that's it for you. So you don't have to come back into this world of suffering and pain anymore, which Buddha says is full of suffering, first noble truth. But if you're a lump, still soft clay, and you get walked on by a cow, then you have to come back to the potter's hands. So let's say that's the case with most of us. We're still lumps, you see. So let's come back as a lump with some propensities for wisdom, with some dharma in our mind, with some palettes to paint for our future. You see, that's why I put together this whole chart pretty much out of a Tibetan Buddhist teaching, because the Tibetan Buddhists have concentrated the most on this rebirth process and what it entails. Bardos after death and things like that. So I think we've actually run out of time, but let's continue on in this vein tomorrow at the same time here in SRV San Francisco. and take up some of these teachings that have to do with the rest of this chapter 5 of the Svetashvatara Upanisad. So let's end here with a chant. Om Sato Ma Sadgamoya Tamaso Ma Joytir Gamoya Mrichor Ma Amritam Gamoya Abira Mayeti Rudrayate Dakshinamukam Tenamam Pahinicham Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth. Lead us from the unreal to the real, and lead us from the illusion of death to immortality. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.